How do you not get jealous when your partner fucks someone else?
I'm like actually really happy that they're doing that together.
We just want to be happy and fucking.
You can even transform jealousy into feeling pleasure or feeling happy.
Like, I'm so happy someone's sucking your dick right now and it's not me.
Yeah.
Hello, my Luvbites fam. Welcome back to Luvbites by Dr. Tara podcast. I am so excited to answer all of your polyamory questions today with the very expert on this topic. So joining me is Irene Morning. Irene Morning is the Poly Pleasure Coach. And really, she's the polyamorous relationships expert. She also wrote the book called The Polyamory Paradox. Welcome to Luvbites.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so this season is like 10 things about sex. So this is 10 things about polyamory.
Great.
You're like, I'm the person, girl.
There's more than 10 things, but we'll start there.
Would you say there's like 100 things?
I don't know if we could actually put a number on it.
So you're in a polyamorous relationship.
I am, yeah.
Okay. And what inspired you to write this book?
So when I first started realizing that I identified as polyamorous and started actually putting it into practice, it was a really, really, it was a struggle for me. And it brought up a lot of PTSD symptoms that I thought I had already worked through and prompted me, to work through them all over again. And in that process, I was having a really hard time finding the support that I needed. And so the book kind of came as my work evolved in responding to my own need and me kind of going like, it would really be helpful to have this kind of resource out there. This is the book that I needed when I was making that transition from monogamy to non-monogamy.
Wow. So personal stories and motivations.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, and my work has been working with people individually for a while. And the more I was going through that healing process for myself, the more, obviously it was attracting clients who also needed that kind of support.
Yeah.
So the book is written really kind of centering my story, but also sampling from a lot of what I hear from clients directly.
So you're the perfect person to answer these 10 questions about poly.
Bring it on.
And a pleasure coach. We love pleasure.
We love pleasure.
Okay, number 1. We get this a lot. How do you not get jealous when your partner fucks someone else?
Well, I think there's a misconception out there that poly people don't get jealous or that jealousy isn't going to be part of that relationship. And I think there's more of a reframing going on of like, I'm not expecting to not experience jealousy. I'm just going to learn to work with it differently than I would in monogamy. So like taking more ownership of it and saying, what is this prompting me? Like, what am I feeling in that jealousy? Is it an insecurity? Is it a fear? Is it something, and it's usually a combination of all these things. Is there something that I need to ask my partner for in terms of reassurance or reconnecting with me? Or is there stuff coming up there that like I need to be working on for myself?
Do you experience like heightened jealousy, or do you feel like you're a very like low, manageable, like know how to navigate it myself? Jealousy.
It's I have clients kind of like ask in a way where like they're looking for hope that it gets easier and better.
Right.
And it does. Like you can work on it, and you can even transform jealousy into what in the non-monogamy world we call compersion, which is like feeling pleasure or feeling happy, seeing your partner be happy with someone else.
Like, I'm so happy someone's sucking your dick right now and it's not me.
Yeah. So I mean, some people really, yeah, totally.
It's a job.
Exactly. Like, okay, you're going to take that off my hands for a minute. Cool. But you can actually get from like the same situation stirring up jealousy to that situation later giving you a sense of happiness or you feeling totally like elated and supportive of it. And there can still be instances where jealousy pops up and like takes you by surprise. And then it's kind of about, okay, can I flex this muscle of what am I doing to work with it? So I would say for me, when you said that, like there was something that came to mind for me where like years ago, my primary partner who I live with, he's a touring musician, and it used to make me really jealous if someone else was going to be like going to a gig with him or traveling with him. And it's now come to a place where when that's the situation and I'm at home and there's a partner going on a trip with him, I'm like actually really happy that they're doing that together.
Wow. And obviously, this comes from a very generous, like compassionate space, right? Rather than competition and comparison.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a probing question. I've heard from some people who tell me like being poly is an orientation, like you're poly and you can't change. And people that are not poly cannot be poly. What do you think about that?
I think it's a mixed bag.
Okay.
My feeling on this is there are some people who it really is an orientation for them. Like their true, fully expressed self won't be satisfied unless they're operating this way in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that that's true for some people. I actually feel that way about myself.
Okay.
Does that mean that everyone who's practicing polyamory is that way? Not necessarily. There are some people for whom I think a whole spectrum of non-monogamous styles can actually be about a lifestyle and about potentially like a place in their life where maybe they're traveling a lot or they're dealing with a lot of family stuff or they're just kind of overloaded by other parts of their life. And it makes more sense there if they want to be connecting intimately with people, but they don't have bandwidth to really be like building more present relationships in their life. That can make a lot of sense to say like, I'm going to be non-monogamous right now and see people when and where I can and just be transparent about all of that.
It's like being realistic.
It's being realistic. I mean, and one of the great things about non-monogamous relationships is like they can all really be tailored to the reality of your life, right? Like that's part of what we're trying to do here is really look at like what's my context, what relationship structure fits.
Right.
So it's a both and we are starting to have more research looking at how that actually operates for people.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing some information that says like some people can actually be totally happy in a polyamorous dynamic and then their circumstances change and they can also be totally happy in a monogamous dynamic. So I think there's orientation, I think there's lifestyle, I think there's also people who can operate along the spectrum and actually be totally relationally fulfilled.
Wow. Okay, well, the second question is a little bit related to that, but I think this is good education for everybody. Can you talk about the differences between open relationships, polyamorous relationships, maybe another type like a swinging relationships? Because I think in the modern world, there are a lot of people using these terms incorrectly and perhaps are describing themselves incorrectly, right? Like I have had someone that told me that they're this thing and I'm like, that doesn't sound like it.
but that's not actually what you're doing.
Right. So yes, can you tell everybody the differences between open, poly, and maybe swinging?
Sure. So I guess I also want to start answering this question with, I see a lot of educators and coaches and sex and relationship professionals trying to figure out how to put this diplomatically.
Bullshitting?
Well, bullshitting, but also like being overly nitpicky about this. And I think getting a little bit hung up on like, are we using the terms correctly?
Right. Like, it's like, are you happy? Okay, good.
Yeah, exactly. And like the thing for me is like language is a means of communicating, right? I mean, I know that sounds like duh, but what we're trying to do with language is convey to each other something about ourselves.
Right.
And understand what other people mean about themselves. So when it comes to understanding these words, I think it's actually really important to ask people, what do you mean when you say that? So that's kind of my like, I don't know, preamble to this, that like people do use them differently.
Right.
And it's always a good idea to check in with the person who's in front of you of like, what does that mean to you? Because here's what it means to me. And like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually a great thing if we're dating people to dive into that conversation and get more and not like lean on assumptions about the definition.
Right.
That said, the ways that I define those terms is polyamorous, I think of as having the capacity and the potential to be in love with more than one person at once and to develop like deep, loving relationships with more than one person at a time. That doesn't mean that you have to be in love with multiple people for that to be, for your polyamory to be valid. but you recognizing that you feel open to that and you
Mhm.
feel that's a possibility for you is kind
Okay.
of the thing there.
So poly has capacity to love multiple people.
Open relationships, this can get into like, I see this kind of as like a bridge between poly and swinging.
Right. Whatever
Where
your configurations are.
yeah, and like the open relationship thing I think is actually where it's especially important to ask people like, well, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
Because people have a whole spectrum of different ways of doing it. And I think of that kind of more as like there's one main relationship in it that is open to those partners sleeping with other people, dating other people, exploring with other people, but there's sort of an assumed limit on how much they're going to integrate those other people into their daily life.
Based on their conversation.
Right.
Yeah. So is your relationship poly and open or poly and closed?
That's a great question. My relationship is poly and open.
Okay. Because I know they are poly and closed.
Right.
So they are just like in a group and like it's our understanding we don't sleep with other people outside of this.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, mine is very much open. I have two partners who I would say are like really entwined in my daily life, who I'm nurturing those relationships. I'm very present in those relationships on a daily basis. One of them I live with, and I also still have other people that kind of come and go on a more sporadic basis, and each of those partners also are totally like open to other things.
Okay, cool. I know that in open relationships, particularly like using condoms is very, very important. So I want to shout out my sponsor for this episode. My sponsor for this episode is MyONE Condoms or One Condoms. They are amazing. They have 52 different sizes, different lengths, different widths, like 52
That's
different
amazing.
sizes. And my favorite function on their website is you could go to MyONE Condoms and literally measure your dick length, size, and the size of the width, like the girth, and then order custom condoms.
Whoa. I
It's
have not
like
heard about this.
custom suits, right?
That's
It's
amazing.
fancy.
Like custom relationships. You need a custom condom.
Custom condoms for custom relationships. Like why would you want to wear a condom that's like too big or too small, right? This is literally your own condom. So when you go to their website, which is in the episode description, you can go get this measurement tape on the website. And once you measure, you can order a sample, free sample. It's
Cool.
sent to you. And yeah, so because a lot of people have like penis anxiety, right? And if you wear a condom that's too big, then there's like that loose part at the end. It can like slip off and can cause all kinds of negative emotions about using that condom.
Honestly, anything that makes people feel more at ease around having sex, I'm all for.
Me too. That's why I'm like, okay, so if you want, you can also just order these like samples. There's a snug one that is smaller and then a large one that's bigger. And there's 3 sizes within these boxes where you can try all of them and see which one fits best. Or like I said, go and measure it with this tape that's on their website and order a custom one.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question we have, I think this is such a great question. A lot of people have asked me this, and I try to read like research findings and stuff, but I think you will be able to answer this for us finally. Number 3, how does one know they are poly?
I could talk about this forever.
It's like, how does one know that they're gay, right? Like, it's like, how does one know they're poly?
This is not necessarily going to be the quick, easy answer we're looking for, but I think it can really depend on the person. I mean, I'll say for myself, like the thing that prompted me to start going in this direction was I started seeing someone, one of my current partners, and as we got a little bit deeper into the relationship, like I was treating it as a very casual thing at first. And there kind of came a point where I started feeling deeper feelings and at the same time found myself actually fantasizing about knowing about his other partners and wanting to hear what his feelings were about other people. And like not in a like nosy way where I was trying to
or like competition.
Or competition. It just was like a genuine like, oh, wouldn't it be beautiful to have more of this understanding of who he is? And like that desire came up very organically
Okay.
in me.
So organic curiosity about other people in your partner's life.
Organic curiosity about other people in your partner's life, spontaneous fantasizing about them in other sexual situations. And that one can be a little bit tricky, right? Because I don't think that fantasies always translate to
Right.
reality.
But I have done both of that.
Yeah.
Both of those things.
Totally. And like fantasy can definitely
I'm not
lead
like
you.
poly or, well, not that I know of.
Mhm.
But I've done those things.
Well, I think those can be things that prompt you to look at it a little differently, right? Like if that's not coming online for you at all, then
This is
maybe
not
not,
for you.
right? Or like maybe you have some other kind of cueing, but like I think also, you know, if you're hearing people, the biggest thing for me is just kind of a process of discernment of like, as you learn about it, as you hear about it, do you have curiosity come up or do you just kind of have an aversion come up?
Like, oh, that makes me feel bad. Like hearing
Yeah,
about
of
the
like,
other people in your
oh,
life.
I don't think I want that. Then like you probably don't want that.
Oh, so falsifying.
Yeah.
So if you have a visceral negative reaction, it's not for you.
Yeah. And I think, and even that can be a little bit complicated because, like, for me, what started happening as I was putting it into practice was my body started having a really big negative reaction. And that I would say, if you're having a really big negative reaction that you can't seem to gain any progress with and you can't seem to work through, like there's no traction when you're really putting effort into it and you're losing any sense of curiosity or desire for the thing, then we want to like take a step back and reevaluate. The thing that was happening for me was I was still really strongly identifying with the concepts around poly and the philosophy around poly and really wanting my partner to be happy with other people. And so it was like this desire is balancing out and helping me stay motivated to like work through this other stuff.
So if like in very simple terms, do you feel like if someone's interested in poly because they know monogamy isn't working for them, is there like a quiz or something that they can take?
You know, I actually don't know if there's a quiz. Off the top of my head, I don't know a quiz that will tell you like, are you poly or not?
Right.
I know that the Open Late podcast for a while had a quiz of like which different kind of non-monogamy might be a good fit for you.
Okay.
I don't know if
fish that out.
Yeah, I know that they went through a transfer of who was running it, and I don't know if that quiz is still online, but that can kind of help discern.
Okay. Well, on Luvbites.co, my website, I have a quiz that is regarding whether or not you're monogamous or flexible. So if you're leaning flexible, you are more likely to enjoy one of these other types of non-traditional relationships. Number 4, is there a limit to the number of partners a poly person can have?
I don't think technically, but I think the majority of people max out on like time and energy and having like 2 consistent partners.
Okay. Yeah, I heard, or from what I've observed, that's the most common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it gets like you're juggling a lot of Google calendars.
And a full-time job.
Yeah.
Maybe like parenting.
Yep.
Okay, number 5, are polyamorous weddings a thing?
Oh, totally.
Oh my God, tell us more.
Yeah, 1,000%. Well, and they can be really beautiful. I mean, I've seen some where like the person officiating was a partner of one of the people, you know, and like
wow, that's poly, right?
Yeah. That is like peak poly.
Love for your partner.
Yeah. Totally.
Wow. Number 6, what are some challenges in poly?
As soon as I said that about the wedding, I was also thinking the ceremonies, the rituals are a thing, but legally, obviously, like there aren't marriage licenses for poly relationships.
Because polygamy is illegal.
Right.
Can you explain to our audience the differences between polygamy and polyamory?
So polygamy is a marriage structure where you have one husband and many wives. And I think, you know, the majority of Americans probably have the association around like Mormonism and that
right,
being,
the Mormons I saw on Netflix.
Exactly. Or like that show Big Love on HBO from like, I don't know, early 2000s maybe.
Yeah.
Versus polyamory is not that specific of a structure and is definitely not being facilitated by any one like religious belief system.
Right.
I mean, Oakland just became the first city to pass legal protections for poly people, but
Really?
there are not, well, and actually there's a city in Massachusetts that recognizes non-monogamous marriage.
Really?
But those legal gains are kind of like slow and in the early stages.
Oh, but that's so interesting. I've
Yeah.
never heard of that.
Yeah. So, which is related, I mean, to kind of answer the question more directly, there's a lot of stigma that poly people face and a
Right.
lot of like societal judgment around it.
So much judgment.
So much judgment, so much misunderstanding. I think probably the most common thing that poly people hear when other people find out that they're poly is like, oh, I could never do that.
Right.
And
But
it's
like
just kind of
always
like,
in a tone of like, I'm better than you. Like,
or just kind of like, I don't get it. And
yeah.
it's like, okay, I don't say
You're
that.
weird.
Like, I think you're in a shitty relationship. I don't come at you saying
Exactly.
like, I
Like
could never
your
do
marriage
that.
is problematic.
Yeah.
Like you're monogamous and cheats all the time. Like,
Yeah. Exactly.
So, what is a challenge that is the most common amongst all poly people within their own relationship?
You know, I think that misunderstanding from people outside of their non-monogamous life is a pretty common one. And it makes it, I see very often people have concerns or are reserved about how much they share with other people in their lives because they don't want to deal with that judgment or whatever negative consequences might come from like family or friends who aren't non-monogamous.
So keeping it a secret?
Keeping it a secret, or at least keeping the specifics of it kind of like shut down a little bit, just not sharing very openly.
Wow. Number 7, is there a hierarchy of partners in polyamorous relationships, like primary, secondary, third wheel?
So in some, yes, definitely not all. And I think we also run into, there are various schools of thought out there about whether or not relationships that have a primary are considered ethical. There are some people who make the argument that it's not really ethical polyamory unless you're doing it in a totally egalitarian way and like
Ooh.
everybody gets to be totally equal.
Ooh, polydrama.
Yeah, exactly. I will say, I will be very clear on my stance with that, where like I'm not in that camp. I think the biggest thing in any relationship dynamic is just making sure that it's consensual.
Yes.
So
and everyone's happy.
Exactly.
We just want to be happy and fucking.
Exactly. We all want to be happy. We all want to be having sex.
Yeah.
Unless we're on the A spectrum, and then
less
whatever.
Yeah, less judgment, more
Yeah.
more happiness, peace and
Whatever
love.
whatever works for you.
Yeah.
So there's a mixed bag there.
So you have a primary. Or your two people are kind of equal.
Well, so there's also a thing where you might not consider someone primary, but just because of the way that they're structured into your life, they kind of get more of the time and resources and whatever, right? So like I live with one of my partners, and that living dynamic, the way that we've built a life together, means that our lives are just intertwined in a way that's different and gets more of my energy than other relationships in my life. I do sometimes refer to it as a primary partnership, and this is where like the languaging all gets tricky, right? Where like I don't necessarily feel that way in terms of other relationships can't come in and take a primary role in my life, but that one does kind of take up that role right now.
I see. When you meet other people, do you go like, this is my partner and this is my partner?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to it's
Do they ever go like, what does that mean?
Well, it's funny because I as you were asking the question, I was trying to imagine scenarios where I'm with
both of
more
them?
than one partner at a time and we're not already in a non-monogamous context.
Oh, I see.
Where
like you're at Wendy's.
Yeah. Yeah. We walk up to the fast food counter and I'm like, hey, guess what? I'm with both of them.
Yeah. What if the person at the kiosk like, who are these? Who are these guys? Who are these people?
Yeah. Whenever I get interrogated about a burger.
Well, next time, let me know what they say.
I'll circle back.
Number 8, do you share toys with all your partners? Or do you like label them?
Some of them, yes, and some of them, no. And that's something where I do recommend just having really clear and direct communication. And like, if there are toys that you're used to using with one partner, I mean, I also like, I don't know if this is like a kink of mine or something, but I really enjoy actually lending my toys to other partners to use with other partners. Like that brings me a certain kind of joy.
Wow. Toy poly.
Toy poly.
New
Exactly.
term.
All the pleasure for all the partners.
Hello, this is Toy Poly with Irene Morning.
Yeah, so I like to, but I also know plenty of people where like that's actually a kind of sensitive subject. And I think again, there's like a huge range.
So just talk about it.
Just talk about it. No assumptions. The big thing about polyamory is like just don't make assumptions.
Talk about everything.
Talk about everything.
Number 9, are there polyamorous specific dating apps, or how do you meet people in the wild?
I mean, there are a lot of poly people on Field. #open is another one that I feel like has popped up somewhat recently that is more geared toward non-monogamy. To be honest, off the top of my head, I can't think of one that's poly specific.
Okay.
But there are a couple that lean more non-monogamy.
Right.
One of the other things that's pretty common for poly people trying to meet other poly people is to go to play parties because people there are more likely to be somewhere along the non-monogamous spectrum, right? Like very few straight up monogamous people are going to play parties to play with others. But yeah, it
What about like Equinox?
Yeah, totally.
Trader Joe's?
Yeah. You just walk around with like, I'm poly on your forehead and like,
poly,
hope
are
that
you?
Yeah, exactly. Or there's like a weird like magnet system. We all carry like little signals in our clothing and pick up on other people.
Oh, there should be a clothing thing for poly.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, swingers have upside down pineapples and they wear it on their t-shirts and they wear like they have like a little key ring and you can kind of tell, oh, like they're swingers. Or like houses that have like upside down pineapple outside.
Yep.
Poly people should have something.
Poly people have a flag.
That's true, but you don't want to like.
But you don't.
wear
But
your
yeah, like no one. And there's like poly drama about like whether or not people like the flag.
Oh my god, what if it's an animal? Like, what's a good animal for poly? Oh, what's a good animal that like have a group of love, like group love?
I mean, I was gonna say bonobos, but that's kind of just more fucking.
Yeah, but like, what if you have like bonobos earrings?
Yeah. I mean, there's
that's your new merch store, by the way.
Well, I was gonna say it's tricky because there's a group in the Bay Area called the Bonobo Network.
Oh my god! And what are they?
Oh, Nicoletta Heidegger and I are actually teaching at their retreat next weekend. They are a play party community that have been at it, I want to say, for like a decade. They do a really good job of combining parties with consent education and communication stuff and really giving people like all the tools for being skilled in
sex ed / sex party.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I still think there should be a merch store for poly people.
I'll work on it.
Yeah, where there's like a symbol, you can spot them from the wild. I want to like be able to like be on an elliptical at Equinox and look over and be like, oh, you poly, me poly. We need that, right? Last but not least, number 10. What's your final tip for people who are interested in poly?
My go-to around this is go slow enough that you can make sure you're centering your desire and your curiosity. I see a lot of people get curious about it and dive in the deep end and get really overwhelmed. And then
get into an 8-people relationship.
Yeah, or try to open up an existing relationship and get really triggered by it and just try to keep pushing through that because they think like, okay, if I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And it's actually more of a process where you need to take some steps, process how that feels, figure out, was that the right step for me? Is this the direction I want to be going? Or is there actually a different configuration?
Right.
Do I need to like take in the information here and maybe adjust how I'm feeling?
And get the Polyamory Paradox.
Yeah, and get resourced.
So what's the 3 bullet points about this book?
It is meant to be a how-to for how to transition from monogamy to non-monogamy. It is body-based so that it can be really trauma-aware. And it's just full of good relationshiping skills.
Relationshiping skills.
Right. Okay. There's a chapter on communication, there's a chapter on conflict, there's a chapter on collaboration. And I think regardless of your actual relationship structure, those are all relationship skills that benefit everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I opened to this examples, but for small but mighty moments. And I'm just like, these are amazing for everybody.
Yeah, I wrote the book for that specific experience of transitioning into non-monogamy and getting really triggered by it. But all the feedback that I've gotten on the book is people saying, like, I want my monogamous friends to read this too. Like, this is just like good relationshiping.
Tips. Yeah, awesome. Okay, before we go, I gotta ask you, but I feel like your whole book and like your existence is already a hot take. But I ask this like to every guest. So like, what is your hot take on sex and dating in 2024? So like an controversial opinion.
My hot take on sex and dating in 2024 is that you have to be centering your own pleasure. You have to be figuring out what your own pleasure means to you, and you have to make that the guiding force for everything.
Yeah, so like if you're not coming, don't just like blame your partner because you're there too.
Totally. You've got to be figuring out your own pleasure for yourself.
Yes.
And making that the priority across the board.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Where can everyone find you?
I'm on Instagram as Irene_Morning, and you can download the book for free on my website, irenemorning.com.
Lovely. Thank you. And my Luvbites fam, thank you so much for watching and listening till the end of the episode. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, and do all the things. I'm sending you 100 orgasms for doing them. Other than that, have an orgasmic day. Bye.
Thanks for listening. This was Love Bites. Love Bites. By Dr. Tara. Follow Dr. Tara on social media at lovebites.co. Have an orgasmic day.